So we've heard from 4 leading effectiveness experts talking about the expectations from measurement and being able to accurately assess business outcomes. We've learned about the need for MMM and other techniques to have reliable campaign exposure metrics. And what's clear is that we need to have comparable data to understand the incremental contribution of different media channels and platforms to delivering business outcomes. Alongside this is a more general observation of the importance of the role of international players. Any solution that we adopt here in the UK can't be created in isolation of what's going on elsewhere, particularly in the US. So I'm really excited to be joined by George Ivie, CEO and Executive Director at the MRC, and Justin Sampson, Barb CEO. There is clearly a lot of benefit to learning from the MRC and seeing how we can import its cross-media thinking into the UK. So George, I'm going to start by asking you, how did the MRC come into being and how have your responsibilities evolved over time?
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for having me. The MRC has been around since the early 1960s, and we were formed at the request of the U.S. Congress. Back at that time, there were some weird turns of events in the media business. Probably the most notable one was a quiz show scandal, where there were media enterprises rigging the results of quiz shows to perpetuate contestants on the shows. They would win a lot of money, it would attract a lot of audience, and therefore enhanced audience estimates and the ability to charge more for advertising. Those rigged quiz shows were leaked in a very ugly public manner, and it got the attention of the U.S. Congress, who quite simply asked, why would somebody do that? And they conducted a hearing around audience measurement ratings at the time. Keep in mind, this was in the early 60s. And they found that there was very little, if any, transparency or knowledge about how ratings were produced. There was a 6-year-long set of hearings conducted by the U.S. Congress about this industry, really. And at the end of that process, they decided there should be some regulation over how media is measured. And they decided not to regulate it themselves, that the government really wasn't well equipped. As a result, they asked the industry to self-regulate. And the U.S. media industry got together, buyers and sellers, and they formed our organization. And back then, we were called the Broadcast Rating Council. We audited and set standards for measurement of television and radio broadcast measurement. And we've evolved. Now we do that function over all different media types, inclusive of digital, print, out-of-home, etc. And that's how we were formed, basically. And we were granted permission to do what we do by the U.S. government to do this industry self-regulation using industry participants, buyers and sellers on our audit committees as our members who actually see the results of audits and vote on accreditation.
That's really interesting. So, Justin, why do you think it's appropriate for Barb to now get involved with the MRC, and how is it relevant to what we're doing over here in the UK?
So we've been aware of the role of the MRC and the great work that George and the team have been doing for many years. And there's actually a lot of shared genetic material between Barb and the MRC. We're both committed to best practice in audience measurement. We both advocate for a shared language across the industry. We both believe in the importance of transparency on how data is collected and compiled. The main difference between us and the MRC is that we have executional responsibility. So we specify services that the industry wants. We go about commissioning the right research agencies and data businesses to help us deliver those, and we deliver solutions and monitor that they're to the standards that are expected. And to the point you made in the introduction, we can't escape this international backdrop of brand owners of how brand owners, I should say, many of whom are global businesses themselves, get the cross-media measurement that they want and they deserve. And we, as Barb, we've made some pretty good progress in getting international players into our audience measurement. And nowhere else in the world are pure play streamers such as Amazon, Netflix, Disney getting on board with joint industry campaign reporting systems. But we've also committed to working with other big online platforms, whether that be directly in a relationship with Barb or through ISBA's Project Origin initiative. And in that context, we have always recognized as Barb the importance of getting alignment on metrics. And again, to what you said in your introduction, Emma, that importance of comparability across all the different players in the market. And we kept an eye, I think George might talk about this in a moment, sort of across the last half of the last decade, there was a big process in the US to develop what are known as the MRC cross-media standards. And we think that they're very relevant to the work we need to do here in the UK. So earlier this year, we made a decision to become members of the MRC, which was kind of committing even more to the work that they do and to see how we can bring it to be of benefit to everybody here in the UK.
So, George, how did you actually go about developing the cross-media standard for video, and what are the sort of headline requirements for it?
We have a history of writing standards dating back many, many years, and we have a process in place that's accepted by the industry to do that. The very first foundational aspect of it is that it's very inclusive. So when we wrote the cross-media standards, there were over 200 companies involved in the committee that wrote that set of standards, buyers and sellers and trade associations of all kinds. You don't have to be a member of the MRC to participate in that. Anybody can be a member of a standards working group. So we gather together large groups of people who have different points of view. One common aspect is many have extensive expertise in measurement. They're researchers and measurement people. And basically, we start a process where the MRC staff creates what they believe. When we're independent, the MRC staff doesn't work for any media buyer or seller. We only exist to oversee our audit and accreditation process and oversee the standards writing process neutrally. So we start the process by creating a table of contents and what we believe the document should contain. And we start writing section by section, and it's vetted by this large group of people. Is it complete? Does it have all the right requirements in it? We might have to do research from time to time, empirical research on how things work. Before we set a standard, do they work like we think they work in the measurement area? And so we went through this process, and that process takes a couple of years to create a document with that kind of powerful group and trying to reach a consensus. So it was a very lengthy and arduous process to work and get consensus among this diverse group of participants. Some of the high-level requirements. So first of all, we're trying to accurately measure unique reach across video. This standard is focused on video, cross-media video audience measurement. And to your opening remarks, Emma, the standard itself sets a foundation for industry practitioners to be able to optimize the allocation and deliver the efficiency of their media spend. And it creates an input for enhanced analysis of ROI, of advertising. So those are the goals. But we had to write a standard to set that foundation. Basically, the standard also talks about several other things. Like, first of all, you should measure ads as well as content. And our initial vision in writing the standard was to do that on a segregated basis because they have different attributes. So the standard lays out requirements for measuring ads and content. It introduced a concept called duration weighting. of an impression. So we have a viewable impression that's duration weighted over the length of the ad. So that was a new metric that we introduced in the standard, highly debated, but eventually reached a very strong consensus that that was a good idea. We expanded and required viewability also as the basis of that measurement. And we realized that in the television environment, for example, there is no such thing really as a partial pixel exposure. So we wanted to change the viewability requirement to 100% of pixels, and then the other requirements. And then last, we have a lot of requirements in the standard for cleaning and the appropriate use of data sets, because when you're measuring cross-media, you're bringing in data from multiple enterprises, with multiple attributes, and you have to clean that and bring it up to a certain level of quality before it gets implemented within the cross-media system. So the standard lays out all of those requirements. So those are some of the top-level requirements.
How can Barb deal with the MRC's requirement that the standard is underpinned by second level reporting?
Well, the way we report at the moment is at a sort of a minute-by-minute level. And as you say, there's this kind of underpinning within the MRC requirement of being able to go down to second by second. And it is a process we've started, sort of helping them. There's a lot of companies in the Barb ecosystem, and we've got to move them all kind of in an orderly way towards this different way of using the data. And it's not an overnight flick of the switch. Barb data is woven into the fabric of daily life across lots and lots of nooks and crannies in our industry. And to use an analogy, let's say here in the UK, we currently only have pounds. It's a bit like going to a world where you've got pounds and pence. And so you have to bring everybody with you in terms of understanding the context of changing the basic measurement unit. So there's a challenge of getting used to the new data. We have to provide comfort that we haven't gone to a system that's more granular but less accurate. Nobody wants to be precisely wrong. We need to enable buyers and sellers to adapt to changes in trading practice that are very likely to come with the switch. And we also have to look at reconfiguring the industry infrastructure that supports buying and selling to integrate the new data. And I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't take this as it's essentially a once in a generation opportunity to rethink completely how we distribute data, and in particular moving away from flat file format. So what we've already started doing is we've embarked on a new data distribution strategy with a Barb own data hub at the middle. We're going to have primacy of API access, ensuring consistency of how calculation methodologies are applied. Thinking of the planet, we're trying to reduce the number of databases that are churning Barb data every day. And so we're already making progress to commission key elements of that new data distribution strategy. So we're putting the foundations in place. And so that the idea is, as we continue to talk to the industry, that we can manage the process in an orderly way. And that will be an important process to get right. Just flicking the switch could lead to a bit of chaos, and nobody likes chaos, do they?
And finally, I'd like to ask you both the same question. So the cross-media standard currently applies to video and what people are watching. Is it feasible to envisage a world where there's a cross-media standard that embraces other forms of media? So what people are reading, what people are listening to, what people are scrolling through. How achievable do you think it is to live in a world where we have cross-media standards for other channels?
I hope it is, because we have a plan to do it at the MRC. And what's great is that now Barb, can participate directly as a member with a member influence in that. But we plan 2 more stages of the cross-media standard. And we might do them simultaneously, but just know that we see 3 silos here: video, which is one we've already done, plus audio, and display. So we have those three processes planned. They all have very different attributes. We've already written an audio measurement standard that, for example, introduced the concept of an audible impression. So think of viewability in the audio space. And so we're planning on completing that. Right now, we're working on two standards projects, one on auction transparency in the programmatic space. It's a big standard that we kicked off. A lot of people are interested in that. And plus, we have to finish the second phase of our out-of-home standard. But as soon as we're done with those two, this is our next priority to create the other two phases of cross-media. I believe it's feasible. It's going to be challenging. None of this is easy. None of it is. It can be difficult technically. It can be difficult operationally. It can also be political. So we have to sort all that through, but we do have those plans.
Justin, do you agree with that opinion?
I think that's right. And actually, people who know me know that many years ago I did work in radio and sort of got to grips with radio audience measurement. And picking up on one thing George said, I think there's probably some more potentially easy avenues to getting some kind of cross-media, across viewability and audibility that is fairly comparable. I think the challenges will come with the plethora of digital formats and I haven't got into what people see when they're out and about. We mustn't forget outdoor, which is still a valuable part of the media mix. So it's going to be challenging. We as Barb, our superpower is what people watch, which is why we've sort of really got behind the cross-media standard George has already developed, but we will do whatever we can to help make that cross-media standard even further.
I love the journey you've taken us on, from quiz show scandals back in the 60s to the need for kind of transparency and regulation, and the endeavour for best practice is a really common feature there. We've certainly set the foundations and understanding how duration-based metrics are really important for us to be able to understand what's working, what's not working. And we shouldn't stop with video. Let's carry on. There are other media formats to conquer too. Whilst it might be a challenge, it sounds like we're setting ourselves up for success. So thank you both for joining me today. Thank you.